Welcome to the third episode of the Business Day SME Matters in partnership with the Johannesburg Business School, Digitized Conversation. Thank you for joining us again. If this is the first time that you are joining us and you're not familiar with the SME Matters, this is a digital brand extension of the annual SME Summit, where opportunities are given to small business owners, investors, entrepreneurs, incubators, as well as suppliers to the SME sector to come together and engage with experts in the business technology, marketing and investment fields. And it's where South Africa's leading entrepreneurs and business personalities can share their knowledge and insights and help small businesses grow and stay ahead of the pack. Now, today, I would like you to join me. My name is Mami Mtembu Fawkes. That's Mami Mtembu Fawkes, as I chat to Professor Lyle White, the Senior Director of the Johannesburg Business School, and Mike Cathy, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Nando South Africa. We've also got Ritesh Doshi, who's the Chief Executive Officer at Spring Valley Coffee in Kenya. Now, today we're going to be talking about reducing the inequality and building economic prosperity, being mindful of the broader environment of business and society, and also mitigating risks that will help enhance the profit potential of doing business in Africa. Now, it's no secret that COVID-19 reset has brought on a sudden dramatic change, and it has sparked a new sense of urgency in evaluating the need for businesses to drive change and progress in South Africa and Africa at large. Now, we all know that there's an ongoing social, economic, and political dynamics in South Africa present, and this needs to be, businesses need to change how they currently operate. So business beyond the conventional is what we are talking about, and also talking about purpose-driven context. So what we are going to be talking about with the panelists today is, what are businesses doing now to make their businesses more about the purpose rather than just business as usual? Now, I'm going to be asking a few questions to our panelists, but before I do that, I would like them to each introduce themselves. So Ritesh, can you please just give us a little bit of an introduction about you and what your company is about?
Sure. Thanks, Mami, and good morning. My name is Ritesh Doshi. I'm the CEO of Spring Valley Coffee, Kenya's oldest artisanal roaster. And what we do is we actually roast some of Kenya's finest coffees in country of origin. It's actually the second business that I'm running. I sold my last business, a pizza delivery business, to Pizza Hut in 2016, and really look for a business that balanced profit as well as purpose. And that's why all the coffee that we touch, we add value to in Kenya. We won't just trade a commodity product. We roast some of our highest quality coffees here in Kenya. The business has been running for 2 years now. We have 4 sides of our business. We operate 5 of our own cafes. We supply coffee to some of the leading hotels, restaurants, and cafes, both in Kenya and around the world. We export coffee directly to consumers, and we sell through a few select premium supermarkets across the continent.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That is very, very impressive. I think a lot of people are impressed with that and how you've been able to go on during this time. Now, I'll ask you one question before I move on to our other panelists. But adapting a business's purpose into context of such socioeconomic upheaval will be essential in driving recovery now and even in years to come. What are the plans there as far as you are concerned? What is it that you're already planning as far as purpose is concerned?
Really good question. When we took over the business 2 years ago, we had 7 employees. Pre-COVID, we had 32 employees. Half of them in our retail business and half of them in supporting our hospitality partners. When COVID hit, obviously all of the hotels, lodges, camps, restaurants, cafes that we supply to all shut down. But we had 32 mouths to feed. So we said, well, what can we do to keep everybody alive, happy, and frankly, just surviving? We decided to pivot our business, and we reallocated. So our business literally dropped 70% day one, and almost down 90% when we're hitting the peak of COVID. We have decided to focus on the retail side of our business, and actually have taken a contrarian view. Most of our footprint stores are super small. They're actually quite small. So they're to grab and go, super premium coffee experience. So we said, let's build more cafes. So during COVID, we've actually opened, so we've retrained our people. We've trained our chefs that were working at our airport location, which is shop for many months, to become baristas. We have trained some of our delivery guys to become baristas. We've trained other people in our organization to become trainers or to become roasters. So we've retrained our team. And then we've taken the equipment that we had invested in for hotels and restaurants and put them into our own cafes. So we've actually opened our 5th cafe about 4 weeks ago. We're on track to open our 6th cafe in 3 weeks, and then 2 more cafes before year end. So we'll actually double our retail footprint so that we're able to keep everybody employed. We're able to utilize the resources and the capital and the equipment that we have so that that income is able to literally keep people going through. We did ask our team, we had a very transparent conversation. We asked our team to take a pay cut for a couple of months, which lasted only 3 months. And we asked our suppliers to bear with us for the rest of the year. And everyone's been incredibly supportive. So we couldn't have done this ourselves.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Mike, now I've got a similar question for you. So adapting a business's purpose in the context of such socioeconomic upheaval, what is it that has changed? What has been your purpose? Or maybe let's start with that. What has been your purpose now that we have this pandemic? What is the new purpose?
So there's no new purpose. Our purpose has been for many years to embrace this concept of changing lives wherever we can. And I think if anything, the COVID environment has made that more compelling and has made it a brighter North Star for us to follow. So, you know, and the focus that we have very definitely had, similar to Ritesh, has been initially to focus on the family. So in other words, the people who work for Nando's, make sure that they are well taken care of, make sure that they are paid, make sure that they are feeling loved, safe, as secure as they possibly can be, et cetera, and communicating with them as frequently as we possibly can. And I think that's moved into a kind of an outward circle kind of environment where, you know, start at home with your employees, then focus on the environments within which we trade. So particularly in Lawrenceville, which is where we have our head office, we've done a lot of work with the local community to make sure that they've been as well taken care of as they possibly can be. So there's no new purpose. I think COVID has amplified the purpose. I think it has helped us tremendously weather the storm and be true to who we are and add value wherever we can to our communities and our employees.
And the way that you currently do business, has that changed drastically or has it stayed the same?
The channels have changed. So, you know, one of the biggest shifts that we've seen amongst consumers has been more people wanting to have food delivered to their homes. So that's become a more important part of our business. And of course, the dining in the restaurant environment for a while certainly dropped off while we were in complete lockdown, and then there were limitations on how we could trade. But that's recovering really nicely because I do think that people inherently want to come to the restaurant, experience the ambiance and the art and the design and the beautiful Nandoka's service and, you know, all that sort of thing. But the big shift has been the delivery to home dynamic.
Fantastic. Now, this is a question that everybody, I think, is waiting for. How has Nando's adjusted its strategy over time? I mean, you guys have successfully navigated this business for, if I'm not mistaken, 35 years now you've been in the game?
Just less than 35 years, 33 years this year. So
33 years.
Still very young.
I mean,
yeah.
That is not that young. That is not that young. I'm 37 years old and I don't feel young at all. But
very young.
How is thank you. How have you adjusted your strategy over the years to successfully navigate difficult environments? I mean, 33 years, there have been a lot of ups and downs, and to be able to navigate all of that, I mean, it's interesting. So how has that strategy been changing over the years? Or has it remained the same?
No, I think parts of the strategy have always remained the same and parts of the strategy have evolved over time. I mean, if you think about opening a business 33 years ago, it was definitely not the ideal time to do it. The country was quite tumultuous and there were many challenges, but the founders felt like there was this massive opportunity to address a market and went ahead and did it. I think the spirit of the strategy has always remained the same, and that is to serve the best chicken in the world to a group of South African people who love it. It's always been very people-centric, and that has remained, and if anything, grown stronger over time. There have been certain repositioning changes in the strategy. So, for example, moving away from a purely takeout business to become more of a restaurant business and embracing this concept of showcasing South African creative talent to the world as an intrinsic part of our restaurant design has changed. Obviously, taking note of the importance of a younger audience and engaging with them in issues that they care about has been a change in strategy. And of course, of late, health credentials have become a lot more important to many consumers. We were chatting before the show about the importance of vegetarianism, flexitarianism, and just generally healthy eating. So, the range of our menu has changed. The way that our brand manifests itself in many areas has changed somewhat, in that we now have more dine-in opportunities available for consumers. And of course, of late, digital and social media has become a lot more important than the more traditional media as a way of engaging with consumers. But fundamentally and at heart, we have always been a very people-centric business who have been very proudly and committed South Africans. And that has remained true throughout whatever challenges we have faced. And I think the changes that we have made have been in the interest of engaging more with changing consumer trends and interests.
Fantastic. I mean, that makes so much sense. And I think the whole of South Africa can attest to that. It's all true what you're saying. The next question I would like to pose to Professor Lyle. Purpose. We're hearing about purpose everywhere. I think consumers have changed, especially during this time. They're all about purpose at the moment. What is the role and the purpose of business now? How has this changed over time, and how is it going to change in the future? How important is it?
Thank you, Mami, and thank you very much to Ritesh and to Mike, both of whom I've got to know quite well over the years, and I really admire not only what they've done and their products that they produced. Ritesh knows I'm a massive East African coffee lover, and I appreciate those aficionados out there. And he's walked me through his business in Nairobi, and I could actually see then that he was doing great things and really injecting a great deal of purpose into the oldest roastery, as he mentioned. And then obviously Mike knows that I'm a big fan of Nando's, not only what they produce and not only producing good chicken for us to eat, Mike, but also in what you've done and what you do for the society and community. So that takes me really to your question, Mami. What I see around purpose and how it has evolved over time. Let's just remind the audience out there how the purpose of business has evolved since the 1970s. The days of Milton Friedman, in the height of or the emergence of capitalism, the purpose of business was to create shareholder value or to create profits for the shareholders, essentially. This then evolved into the mid-1980s when we had a customer-centric or customer centricity came to the forefront. Not a bad thing, a very, very good thing. It's all, and none of these things are bad or good or whatever. There's trade-offs that we have when we go through this process. And now what we've heard, and what is so interesting talking to both Mike and Ritesh is this evolution of purpose. And even though what Mike was saying, we haven't altered or we haven't changed course in our purpose, there's a slow change or an evolution of purpose to meet the context that we're in. And I think that's quite interesting because now we have this massive debate that has emerged over the last few years around shareholder value versus stakeholder value. Stakeholder value obviously includes all these great things that Mike and Ritesh have been talking about. It's the people that work for you or the people that work in the business, and they have a stake in the business because they are part of that business. And I think that's what, when Ritesh was talking about how he upskilled people and he provided a transparency around the way forward, for me, that speaks to that you put your employees first. This also spoke to Mike's point around, we look at the people that are working at Nando, so it's our immediate community, and then we kind of expand this into the broader community because all these organizations, all these brands are actually owned by the community. Very often I feel like I'm part of Nando's, and that's all important. And I think that's where purpose has kind of evolved to, especially in this post-COVID world, is the role of purpose in business obviously is around maybe shared value, etc., or an impact in society, but it sometimes does get clouded over or smudged over in that area. I think increasingly the role of purpose in businesses like the ones that we've been listening to, the Spring Valley Coffee or Nando's or a number of others that are out there, is to build a community, is to build that community much more cohesively and to see exactly how, because after all, we're not dismissing profits, but when you build a strong community, you have sustainable profits going forward. So that's maybe, without being too academic, Mummy, that is how I would actually kind of speak to the evolution of purpose and how I've seen it over time from my perspective.
Before I let you go, how important is this for Africa? We always see this is global, but Africa is just a different pedigree. How important is it particularly for Africa?
Yeah, so
as a continent.
Yeah, it's all important. And when we talk about Africa, Mike spoke quite a lot about Nando's in South Africa, but this also obviously speaks to the African context. And the purpose of business in Africa has to be contextually driven. What I mean by that, or contextually relevant. And what I mean by that is that we can talk about purpose generically around the world and how the purpose of business has evolved. But I can say, and these guys, these are the real practitioners. Incidentally, Ritesh, when he was working in that pizza delivery business, that was when I met him and I saw what he was doing, and it was an amazing contribution to Kenyan society, what he was doing. Not only because they were delivering great pizzas, but it was just the way he integrated it with his employees and with the community. But in the African context, business has always been, and it should always be, an intricate part of development. Africa is different. Whether you like it or not, Africa, the per capita incomes in Africa are way lower than anywhere else in the world. Increasingly, the income disparities are high. And then more importantly, when we talk about disparities or this great debate around inequality, the inequality in Africa lies in the inequality of opportunities. And therein lies the great opportunity for business. Therein lies the great role for business is to create the opportunities and to fill the voids that are prevalent. When I say voids, the institutional voids or whatever they might be in this type of strategic speak. But business needs to fill the voids to allow society to build upon itself and to act as an agent of cohesion in society and to drive development in that way. And that's how we will eventually, and that's how we will realize the great potential that lies ahead of us in the African context. So that's how, in my mind, it looks. And any business person that believes that business is not part of the future development of Africa or is not an agent for development in Africa is poorly misguided. And that is probably why we've had so many debates around the role and purpose of business in the context of Africa, more so than in any other parts of the world most recently. It's because we've seen the need for business to, not to intervene in any way, to become an active role player in the drive to develop humans, to develop people, to develop the African community.
Fantastic. Now, speaking of society, while I've got you, before I move on to Ritesh, let me speak to our audience. I will be taking your questions. If you've got your questions, just send them through. I'll be looking away once in a while to read your questions. But also, Ritesh and Mike have decided to be very generous. We've got a voucher and coffee for the best question of the day. And they're going to be offering a voucher of 200 Rand from Nando's, and we've got coffee from Ritesh. So make sure that those questions are nice and spicy, and the best question will be getting that Nando's, and maybe you can share with me. We'll see how that goes. But Ritesh, now getting back to Ritesh, exactly what I was talking to Lyle about, the African context. I mean, you are in a completely different country, but it seems like there's so many similarities between South Africa and Nairobi, or the vast majority of Africa. So how is it, how important is it? I just want you to elaborate on what Lyle has said from your perspective being in Nairobi.
Sure. I mean, I think some of this dates back to pre-COVID, to be honest. I mean, one of the reasons that I bought this business was because in the coffee value chain, most of the value addition is traditionally done in the global north. And, for example, a $20 bag of premium coffee in the US, the farmer here was getting $2.50. So over 90% of the value addition was happening in the global north. And that's what really prompted me to want to be in this space. We've taken a slightly different view. We actually said, well, we can roast to a global standard. We can produce a product to a global standard, to a global premium standard on the continent. And what that means is, one, we can provide a fantastic product locally for our consumers, but more importantly, we can pay premium prices for that product to our farmers. And I'll give you an example. There is one farm that we buy our coffee from, super small farm. They grow using permaculture techniques. So they grow this coffee under the shade of avocado trees next to pineapple trees. And they started doing kind of 5 or 6 acres, then now up to 50 hectares. We buy all of their coffee now. But they just didn't have a market for that product. And they were selling it at the local auction. There was great kind of, very shrewd traders buying it at a lower price, selling it at a premium price internationally. And they weren't getting a fair price for that market because unfortunately the market wasn't transparent, it wasn't efficient. And we now buy 100% of their output, and that's one of our seasonal coffees. But we're able to pay that coffee, those 35 farmers, a fair price for their coffee. It means that they're sustainable. They're able to continue investing in their crop. They can send their kids to school. They can buy the inputs that they need. And it's funny, during COVID, they came to us and they're like, hey, it's been raining. Our yield is amazing. We grew 50% more. And I was like, hold on, I'd committed to buying all your stock. I didn't know you had this much stock. But the right thing to do was to buy all of their stock because that's what we had committed to. It's up to us as business people. We have a responsibility to find a market to sell that product. That's not their job. Their job is to grow amazing coffee because that's what they do incredibly well. And we talk about the value chain. My grandfather always said to me, everybody in the value chain brings some, there's enough for everyone. And the question is, how do we make sure that everybody doesn't get a fair share, but gets an equitable share? And I think it's really important. I think sometimes in Africa, we forget that equity is important. And yes, we have to make a profit to be sustainable. Mike does in his business. I do in my business. That keeps us sustainable, absolutely. But where's the purpose behind what we do? And for me, I feel that my personal purpose is super connected to the purpose of our business. And my personal purpose is to create opportunities for people. How do we do that? We pay them a fair price. We're transparent with them. And that comes down to our employees. Lyle talks about an African context. In all the businesses that I've run, we're super transparent. Pinned up on my pinboard is the P&L for every shop and every location in our business. And people go, you can't do that in Africa. Your employees don't know how much money you make. I go, exactly. They'll know how much money that we make, and they'll know how much there is to go around. They'll know how much we can actually share. They'll know the value we're creating. And it's just a different perspective. So I think the African context is people want to work hard. What's different to the global north, I feel, in Africa is people here are not just driven by money. Of course, we all want to do well. We all want to improve our lives, improve our station in life. But it's not a zero-sum game. And you walk around the streets, be it the streets of Johannesburg or Cape Town or Nairobi or Accra or Lagos, everybody's smiling. The sun is shining, people are smiling. And that's one of the beautiful things that we have in Africa. It's not a zero-sum game. There is enough for everybody. We all help our communities. When you employ that one person in the family, they're supporting so many people. So the responsibility isn't to that one person, but it's to the wider family, to their wider community. And for us, it's really important for us to say what we do, but then to do what we say. So for us, if we've committed to a price, we'll pay that price. You produce 100% more, that's on me to be a more creative business person. That's on my marketing team to get that product out there. That's on my baristas to serve a better coffee. That's not that person's responsibility.
So Ritesh, would you say then the future of big business needs to be modeled on social enterprise?
It's a really interesting question. I don't think it needs to be modeled social enterprise. I personally believe what's business as usual. So, for example, we're moving all of our packaging to be environmentally friendly, to be fully compostable. We'll put it on the bag. We're not shouting from the rooftops about that, because for us that's business as usual. Yes, you might want to get credit for it, but what's business as usual? I think social enterprise. I think by definition, to survive in Africa, to really contribute back to society, you have to be a social enterprise. A business doesn't exist without its employees, its customers, its team, and its suppliers. So you're intrinsically a part of society. I personally feel it doesn't have to be explicitly stated. I actually think every business is a social enterprise. The question is, do you accept and embrace that, or do you not? But I think you are a social enterprise in everything you do. I'll give you an example. Where we're located in a neighborhood called Spring Valley, where the name comes from. Everybody says to me, and Lyle's been here, everyone said, move to a more efficient area, move to a big production facility. We don't want to move because we buy our meals from the lady across the street. We for our staff, we buy our packaging, we give the pallets that our coffee comes to the local carpenter to reuse the wood. If we leave this, forget our own 32 employees, there's probably 15 or 20 other people around our premises that would lose their livelihood. So that's the responsibility. That's about being a social enterprise above and beyond the traditional stakeholders that we talk about. It's the people that are around us, the people that we surround, the little vegetable lady next door, the guy with the flower stall next door to us, that have business because we exist where we exist.
Fantastic. Now, speaking of consumers and stakeholders, a lot of customers currently, okay, this is a little bit touchy, but a lot of customers are boycotting products from companies whose values have been viewed as contrary to their own. What are some of the societal tensions that come to mind when it comes to the consumer? I'd like Mike to first answer this question, and then I will ask it to Ritesh as well from an African perspective, from where you are at right now, if you are seeing the same thing. I mean, in South Africa, we've had a series of these types of events. So Mike, over to you. What do you advise? Oh, my apologies. Well, that's embarrassing. Oh, 2020, what a wonderful year. All right, Mike, back to you. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again. But Mike, what is the advice that you should companies be really looking at consumers? It looks like there's so much power now that lies with consumers. Not that it wasn't there before, but it seems more prevalent now. And we've seen it lately happen. What is your advice as far as companies, or even the smaller guys that are coming in that are not paying attention perhaps to that?
Well, I think what's very exciting about the world we live in today is the fact that, as you quite rightly say, customers and consumers have always been critically important to any business, and a very deep level of engagement and understanding of them and what they care about has always been critical to business success. But what they have now is a voice that is potentially more powerful than it ever has been previously. And I think that there are two critical elements that play into this. And the first one really goes back to being true to who you are as an organization. Because I do think that customers care deeply about that, and they care deeply about aligning with an organization that has a truckload of integrity in the way that they think about the world. And so, there's a cynical view that organizations are pivoting on different issues and different challenges purely to appear more appealing to customers. And I think customers, being incredibly smart and incredibly vocal, do see through that. So I think that if your values are true to, frankly, very basic human values, and a lot of what Ritesh was speaking about previously resonates very, very deeply with me and with the Nando's organization. So there's this thing about integrity and being true to who you are. There's this other thing about a deep level of engagement with customers. And we've had this concept for some time about giving people a voice where they sometimes don't feel like they've been heard. So that means engaging with them. That means understanding what they truly care about, understanding what they aspire to, understanding what they're afraid of, understanding what they think is hilarious, understanding what they think is unacceptable, and all of that sort of thing. And if you can blend a meeting of minds around values, integrity, and understanding, then I think that you can operate very confidently in any environment.
Fantastic. Now, while you are here, okay, Nando's is like that uncle that always says what everybody is thinking, but is too afraid to say it, right? I know that our audience is currently thinking that. Nando's marketing campaigns, they have always been a hit with South Africans, right? And while always being controversial, how do you embrace challenging trade-offs and uncomfortable truth while still promoting purpose and societal understandings? Because you guys, you're spicy, as the word would say. You are on trend, you in the know, and you can just say it all and still kind of get away with it and still be so impactful. How do you guys do that? I think that is a question that a lot of people have in their minds, is how do you not trigger your consumers so much and get them on board, because they're always on board.
So it's quite closely linked to what I said previously. Having a deep level of engagement with our customers gives us tremendous insights into what society at large cares about at any given point in time. So the first qualifier I'm gonna put right out there is to say, not all of our adverts have been a hit.
Oh yeah, they've been a hit with the people.
some, you know, so hopefully our strike rate is better than most, but certainly there have been some missteps in the past, but we've learned from those quite quickly. Engaging with our customers is such a rewarding experience for us, because they shape us in terms of what they care about. So this concept of giving people a voice who sometimes feel like they don't have it, linked to this concept of speaking truth to power, is a very important guiding principle to us. So if you as an organization are shaped by what your values are, and those values are aligned with what your customers are telling you is important to them, and over the years, and this is a really important point as well, you do have to build credibility by being consistent in what you've done. So we have done what we do for 33 years, and I think over time we have earned the right, because of some of the beatings that we've taken, to say what we say. There have been other organizations who have attempted at various points in time to adopt tonality or spiciness or whatever you want to call it, and sometimes it doesn't quite work. And that's because there is a duration of time over which you do earn the right to speak with a certain tonality in a certain way. Fundamental to that right, though, is the privilege we have of a very strong customer base who are always very unafraid to tell us what they care about, and in many cases, give us ideas about what we should be talking about in our communication. So that's the way that we're thinking about it, and we'll continue to.
Love it, love it. And now Lyle and Ritesh, we'll start with Lyle first. The same thing. What kind of advice would you give to companies that are, for lack of a better word, currently maybe a little bit tone deaf, or rather are missing the point a little bit when it comes to their consumers and what they actually really want? What kind of advice would you give? So this is for Lyle, and after Lyle, I'd like Ritesh to answer the same question quite briefly, and then I've got some questions from our audience.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mummy. Not to repeat exactly what Mike was saying, but it's again, it speaks to some of the earlier points, is that you need to obviously understand your context and your markets a lot more intimately, and so you are part of that community. I think that is very, very important. And you must remember, I've got the luxury of looking at what these guys have to do on a day-to-day basis. Practically, I can sit back on my kind of academic comfy cushion and assess it from afar. But I do often have the opportunity to engage with them in the practical space, and so it is different. But so from afar, when I look at all the different companies and what those that have succeeded through this, it is a deeper understanding and mindful that the younger population, and in Africa, let's remember that the younger population comprises a large majority of that. So you know in many countries around Africa, up to 70% of the population is below the age or under the age of 30, much like you and I, Mummy. They're under the age of 30 at this stage, right? So, and a little bit older, a little bit younger than Nando's. But the consumers at that age are incredibly picky, incredibly judgmental, and they know their stuff, and they will hold you, most importantly, and both of my friends on the other side know this, they will hold you accountable. They will hold you accountable for what you promise and what you do, and they want to see that you're doing good. You're doing good for our community. That is why they actually purchase. Yes, I do look at the quality of the products, and Ritesh and I have spoken at length about the quality of the coffees, and I'm just hoping now that we're going to have some of the Spring Valley coffees in South Africa. We are dying for this now, Ritesh. But the quality is important, but most importantly, they want to know what you're doing. It comes back to this whole thing about developing each and every one of us as individuals, but as organizations, need to develop a contextual intelligence. We have to understand, and contextual intelligence means so many things to different people, or it's interpreted in different ways. But really, the contextual intelligence that I'm referring to is the ability to really function, manage, or adapt in a culturally diverse setting. I'm speaking very specifically in the South African context in Africa. So you obviously are informed by the past, but you also need to be mindful of where you want the future to go and how not only try and predict the future. Just listen to what Mike and Ritesh have said today. They're not trying to predict what's going to happen. They are actually defining the future that they want to see by upskilling their people, by laying the kind of the foundations of going forward. And that is very, very important. On the final note, and I know this might be indirectly related to the question, but all the contextual relevance and the contextual intelligence that we develop as organizations and individuals must be informed by numbers and by empirics, by the empirical evidence. And by that, what I mean is that up until now, because you started off with this question around the purpose of business, and the purpose of business was influenced by how we measure things, by the way, in economics or in the outcome, the results in our businesses. So what it must be informed by is the numbers, and we must start measuring what truly counts to actually inform that for the future of the future purpose of our organizations that will meet or speak to the community and the market that we're talking about. So it's very, very important to start with measuring what counts. And they did, both of our guests today spoke a little bit to this. And I think this is very, very encouraging because it's a great opportunity for organizations. You know, COVID has provided us kind of with this watershed moment. But as both of them have suggested, they were on this course, on track with this long before COVID engulfed the world and Africa as well in the process. So it's important now just to kind of reflect on that and say, okay, well, what are we measuring and how are we measuring to ensure that we have a sustainable purpose going forward?
Thank you very much, Lyle. Now, Ritesh, Lyle is talking about basically having proper analytics of how your customers respond to your brand. Are you seeing your consumers being very vocal as well in the country that you're in Kenya right now? Are they very vocal? And are you seeing a lot of companies also making mistakes there? And what would you briefly say is your advice so that, and I've got a few questions, by the way, coming in from our audience. So if you can just quickly just let us know how that looks in Kenya at the moment.
So customers, I think, around the world are being quite vocal, but I'll give you an example. A lot of things that are really important to us. Well, I'll take a step back to what Mike had said earlier, talk about listening to the customers. I completely share that point of view, but I actually believe in listening to my people because our people are the ones that are on that are actually the front line. In our organization, our people come first, and I tell my customers that. My team comes first. So they're the ones that serve you. They're the ones that make the coffee. They're the ones that roast the coffee. They're the ones that really understand what you want and what you need. And that's, if we're listening to our people, then we're understanding what our customers want. Customers are absolutely being vocal, but our people come first. And I'll give you an example. A customer came in with a mask into one of our cafes the other day, and another customer wasn't wearing a mask. And they had an altercation about wearing a mask. But the right thing is, you have to be wearing a mask because you're making sure that our people are not safe if you're not wearing a mask. And our team came first. And I literally had to go downstairs into the cafe and ask someone to leave, which is not an easy thing to do, but it's absolutely the right thing to do. And one thing I'll say, that COVID was like a slap in the face to most business people. It was like a hard slap in the face, and you get a reality check. We've made a lot of pivots, we've made a lot of changes, but we've absolutely dug in our heels about one particular thing, and that's our values. And I think, as Mike said, they've been doing this for 35 years. We've been doing this as a business for 10 years. Myself and my team have been leading that business for 2.5 years, and we've dug our heels in. Our values are our values, and those are things that are uncompromising. From a quality perspective, when COVID hit, a lot of things could have happened. We could have done things differently, shortchanged our farmers, shortchanged our suppliers, shortchanged our staff, shortchanged our customers, which we've seen people do in our business, in our industry, and in the market. And it's not the right thing to do. And our overlying values is just do the right thing. And a small example is when everybody got shut down, we called all of our customers and said, please send your stock back because we are still open for takeaway. We can use that coffee. And everybody in our community appreciated that. Every hotel, restaurant, cafe that was closed really valued that, as opposed to other people who were calling them and saying, pay us. And that wasn't my call. That was a call that my team said, hey, we can help our customers. And it came back to listen to our people. And you know what's right? You said, how do customers feel? They've been vocal. They have gone and told other people. And bizarrely, through COVID, while our sales are definitely lower, we picked up more new customers because they've told each other. They've told each other that, hey, this is the way these guys operate. So I absolutely believe that your customers, I mean, that's the best form of marketing that we can have. And I truly believe you stick to your core values, as Mike said, stick to what you've always done. And if you're true to it, it will pay off. It's about having the long view. And I think too many businesses today just don't take the long view.
Sorry to interrupt you. Ritesh, we've got a ton of questions coming in. So I just want to get back into that and make sure that our audience is getting their questions in. I've got a question first for Mike. This is coming from Bob Curran. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. It says, what science does your company employ to select sites for outlets? This, I think, is a question that is not necessarily that much about the purpose, but like what science do both companies employ to select sites for outlets? And maybe if you can tie it in as far as purposes is concerned. Mike, can I have a really brief response to that one? There's tons of questions.
Thanks for the question, Bob. So we use all sorts of analytics that look at things like demographic, wealth indicators, traffic movements, population density, affiliative growth points, and all of that sort of thing. So that would be the primary thing. If I were to relate it back into how does that pertain to the purpose of the business, one of the really interesting things that we've learned over the past few years is that the ability of your staff to get to their work environments is very, very expensive if you're not quite thoughtful about that. So we are now increasingly in partnership with great organizations like Harambee, thinking about how we locate our restaurants, how many commuter stops our staff on average have to take to get to the restaurants, what impact that has on their net take-home earnings, and as I say, increasingly plays a role in the way we think about it. So lots of analytics goes into the background, tempered with an increasing awareness of the needs of people to be able to get to work safely and as affordably as possible so that they can be as secure as they can in the work environment.
Fantastic. So it's people first. It's all about purpose going forward for you guys. It's just, it's wonderful to see how everything still ties back to, it's such a human thing. I think we forget that we're dealing with people here, and that makes so much sense for our small business people to listen to. We've got another question before you go. Musa Wenkosi Buthelezi, for the whole panel, but for now, we'll just direct it to you, Mike. It is undeniable that hard choices lie ahead, but when those choices are guided primarily by the short-term interests of a few, then the disenchantment that already exists with business leaders will intensify. Feelings of relative deprivation will grow with destabilizing consequences for all of society. What forms of leadership should businesses now adopt? I think you've kind of touched on this on a greater scale, but in terms of leadership as well, what is it that we need to be purpose-driven and make sure that we don't miss the point?
So I'll answer that very briefly because I could literally talk about this for 17 hours. The first thing is, I think you need to be very, very clear on who you are from a values point of view, and you need to stick to those. You cannot waver. You have to be true to what you believe in, and importantly, you have to deliver against what you say you will deliver on. Words are very, very cheap. Deeds are what matter in the world that we're in right now. And so if you are consistently true to your values and to your purpose, and you do what you say you will going to do consistently, you will have a positive impact on the people that you can impact positively. And I think that's probably the best that we as business leaders can do in the environment that we're in right now.
Straight to the point, makes so much sense. I've got another question here, but this one is going to go through to Lyle. Lyle, since there has been a change of operation in our industry and still is as imposed by the lockdown regulations. And due to that, some establishments have lost a lot of their revenue consulting, resulting in retrenchments of employees. What are the chances of us graduates getting startup jobs in the industry if there is, oh, I need to read this properly. If there is, I'm restructuring this whole question. How can we build our careers regardless of the challenges posed on the pandemic? Okay, let me just redo this question.
I got it, Mummy, don't worry.
Yeah.
And I must tell the audience, it wasn't Mummy stumbling over those. I understand. Let's keep the questions as tight as possible, because it does make it quite difficult to deliver the questions, and they're sometimes written furiously and quickly, and sometimes very difficult to deliver. So I'm just don't give Mummy a hard time on this one. But just to those going out there, my simple response is this. You're talking to two individuals that obviously Nando, as Mike mentioned, started 33 years ago, so it might not seem like a startup, but they're constantly renewing themselves and making themselves relevant in the current context. And Ritesh is almost, we used to refer to him as a serial entrepreneur. This is actually a business that he's actually acquired now over a period of time. But what you can learn from people like this is that you do need to create your own destiny. You need to start your own businesses. And if you are working in existing businesses, you need to reinvent those, or you need to have some type of entrepreneurial flair to make it or to create that differentiator. That's very, very important. In the South African context, where we've got the highest levels of unemployment in the world, the individual, I can't remember the name, but the individual that was asking this question was, are we going to get jobs? I think we need to move this question. It's how are we going to create opportunities for ourselves? Are we going to create our own businesses? We can't sit back as South Africans with an unemployment rate that will probably breach 50% this year. It's actually highly likely that it will even reach up to about 60% this year. And youth unemployment, assuming you are part of our youthful content, youth unemployment is going to go way above 70% this year, 70 to 80%. You can't be sitting back thinking, am I going to get a job? You have to start thinking about, okay, how am I going to take advantage of this incredible opportunity that has presented itself through this crisis? Start creating small and medium-sized businesses. Those will grow and scale, and one day they'll be the great Nandos that we've seen, that we're talking about today. That is just, it's a very simple response. And start talking. And one other, I think it's a sidebar, but it's an important point that I just want to share with my friends that are graduating at the moment. Because obviously, here at the business school, we've got the MBAs. The MBA here at JBS does focus on growing and scaling small and medium-sized businesses. But what I always say to them, and that it's very close to my heart, is that don't just go and don't just look and hope for the opportunities that are emerging. Don't just claim to be doing a networking exercise. Build relationships. Build relationships with the people around you and with everybody else that is there. It's a very simple thing, and it's something that we forget about. And one day we wake up and we go, gee whiz, what happened to that guy Mike that I met 25 years ago? Oh wait, he's part of Nando's. Nando's actually has got an incredible supply chain of small businesses. Why have I not actually engaged with them and seen whether there were maybe opportunities for my small business to service this? There are endless examples of this. And I can tell you now that many of the large organizations in South Africa are hungry to work with small businesses to service them through this process. So those are the opportunities. It's up to you. It's really, really up to you. Don't sit around hoping and waiting for somebody else to provide you with that opportunity.
Of course, hope alone is not a strategy, I always say. We've got another question. Thank you very much, Lyle. We've got another question here. There's so many questions. This one says, the restaurant industry was badly hit by the lockdown internationally. What strategy did Nando's apply to survive the impact on its business model? And while we are here, I'd like Ritesh to also answer this very question as far as your business is concerned. So can I get Ritesh to first answer the question? Ritesh? Okay, we're going to move on over to Mike.
Thank you. So the question was, how did the restaurant industry pivot to survive?
Yes.
I think of course, during complete lockdown, there was a lot of preparation that went into ensuring that we were in the best possible shape coming out of lockdown. So making sure that all of the appropriate health and safety protocols as published and indicated by the various government departments were taken truly seriously. So short answer to that is a lot of preparation to make sure that we were in the best possible shape to reopen when we could. In parallel with that, a lot of communication, a lot of reassurance given to all of our employees that their jobs were not at risk, that they continued to be incredibly valuable members of our family, and that we would all come through this together. And I say that for employees, but equally that is true of our franchise partners, our supply chain partners, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So in the background, there was a lot of reassurance work going on in preparation for the reopening. When the reopening happened, there was obviously a shift, as I mentioned earlier, toward home delivery, but we had done the preparation in the background. We had made the plans necessary to be able to exploit that opportunity as quickly as we could. We launched a brand new channel called Curbside Delivery. We put this whole thing together literally in the space of 10 days, which had a massive impact on our ability to trade when we were allowed to reopen under certain limitations. And again, that's back to the preparation that was done. So a lot of preparation, a lot of engagement and reassurance of staff, a lot of forward thinking to be able to accelerate as rapidly as possible on the emergence from the various lockdown regulations.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you so much, Mike. Now I have a question for the two of you. I think we only have enough time for one more question. I'm sorry to our audience. There's tons of your questions, but we only have enough time for one more question. Now, this refers to the fourth industrial revolution. While we are it says here we are slowly transitioning to the fourth industrial revolution. We are already in the fourth industrial revolution. Is it advisable to build our context around our social media platforms and websites to attract our potential customers and retain our current ones? Now, obviously, Nando has done this really, really well. And as you said before, a lot of companies have tried to copy the model of that. Should that be what SMEs should be gearing towards? Should they be focusing more on their social media?
I mean, anything that you can do to engage with integrity with your consumer base and grow your consumer base has to be a good strategy. The only advice I would give is be authentic and be who you are. Don't pretend to be something that you're not. Don't try and grow at the expense of compromising your values and your purpose. And slower and better is better than quicker and worse, if that makes sense to you. But obviously, the more engagement you can have, the more you can build your customer base, the better it's going to be for your business.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And Lyle, from your side?
Yeah, look, I'd actually echo the sentiments. Mike literally stole one or two of my points there around authenticity. I think authenticity is the most underrated leadership trait, and I think it really is important in terms of especially driving into the unknown. Always remain authentic. And you could hear this from what Mike and Ritesh shared, is that it really went a long way with the employees if you're authentic. And obviously part of that authenticity is to show compassion through these times and to be quite conscious of where you are and intentional in your actions. And that really speaks to this fourth industrial revolution scenario that we're talking about, is just really always remember where your true north is. But I want to hear a little bit more from Ritesh, because these are the guys that are there on the battle lines actually doing these things. So I'd like to hear the more practical, especially from the Kenyan and the East African context. I think that's very, very interesting for us.
Yes, please.
So I think like Mike said, it's really about being authentic and that tonality. Nobody wants a response that sounds like a robot. Thank you for your query. We hear you. I mean, how do we actually talk? How do we speak as human beings? And that's the tonality that I know Nando's employees, that's the tonality that our brand employees, but we've earned that privilege. And it's just about being authentic and being who you are. It's also about when you screw up, own it. We've made mistakes and we're saying, hey, we screwed up. It's okay. We screwed up. This is why we screwed up. This is how we screwed up, but we're going to make it right. I think a lot of times it's easier for larger corporate people to kind of put on the window dressing and hide it. And I say own it. That really builds a relationship. It's funny, some of our biggest advocates as customers are people that have complained about things. And I always tell our team, the easiest way to build a lifelong, and we use the word fanatical customer, if you can handle a complaint correctly, that person 9 times out of 10 can become a fanatical customer. That's not the reason to do it. You do the right thing to solve their problem. But we always say, just do the right thing. And that's our underlying principle. And we like to treat people the way that we like to be treated. And I think that's customers, that's suppliers, and that's all other stakeholders. That's also our farmers.
Thank you very much. Now, we have run out of time, so I would like our panelists to each give us their closing remarks. We'll start with Mike, if you can just give us one piece of advice from today, and something that is a takeaway. If you had to give us one takeaway from this conversation, what would that be?
So the first thing I'd like to say is what a privilege it has been to be able to engage with small business owners and entrepreneurs. The one piece of advice I would give you is understand truly how critically important you are to the future of this country and this continent. Never forget who you are, and build your business based on massive levels of integrity, and you will be successful. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And Ritesh?
Again, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you all for being here. And I think, Mike really took the words out of my mouth. I think the one thing that I would leave everybody with is just be authentic, be who you are, and do what you say and say what you're going to do. And I think if you say it, you hold yourself accountable, and then just do it. And that can change the world. And I think finally, to Lyle's point, it's not about waiting for a job. It's not about waiting for an opportunity. How can you create an opportunity? How do you create a job, not just for yourself, but for somebody else? And we literally view all of the people that work with us as mini entrepreneurs. Everybody who runs a cafe runs their own cafe, even though they're managers within an organization. So just own it. Be entrepreneurial.
Thank you very much. And lastly, from Lyle, Prof.
Thank you, Mummy, and thank you very much for the title. It's a great honor. But I just want to also just echo the sentiments again of both Ritesh and Mike. It really is. It's a great privilege to work with small businesses. You know why? You know why it is? It's because most of the time they are driven by crazy people, especially when they get started, and they've got this restless energy that just needs to be nurtured in the right direction. One important point is it's never too early to have a purpose for your business. Many of the small businesses that I engage with, or that we are mentoring in this process, often refer to the fact that, no, you know what, we need to just get things going, and then we'll develop all this other stuff, this fluffy stuff. The purpose needs to start from the very start, and it's never too early to do that. And you can, if you look back at the history of Nando's, or if you look at Spring Valley Coffee and what Ritesh is speaking to, and this is what he and I have engaged on over the last few years, it really does start in the early stages of your business. So it's never too early. And the other point that I want to leave you with is around the importance, again, and I've reiterated this a number of times, the importance of contextual intelligence. Yes, it really does converge past events and the current contextual variables for an awareness of a preferred future, and a practically and in a practical and a culturally informed way. What I mean by that is the rich diversity in this African context. But it does require the empirical evidence as well. So what I mean by that is, think about the context and make sure that you have a context-driven purpose, but make sure that you're measuring the right things from the very start. And that will help you develop your purpose and have conversations about that. Make sure you continually have conversations first with yourself, have a conversation with yourself, and then be authentic in your engagement with others. And that's the way we can learn. And it goes back to that question around how we're going to find jobs. That's going to be a starting point, is when you start having those conversations with yourself, and you'll develop your own. And this is actually speaking to Ritesh's point. Your personal purpose will then articulate into your small business's purpose. And that is the ultimate thing. That is what we are looking for. So thank you very much, everybody. I really enjoyed being with you today.
Thank you very much, Lyle. Stay true to your purpose, stay true to your values, put people first, feel the fear and do it anyway. And remember, hope alone is not a strategy. Thank you to the Johannesburg Business School for partnering with the Business Day SME Matters digitized series. This was the 3rd episode of our 4-part series. From me, Mami Mtembu Forks, thank you and have a good day.